Within this idea of, so God wants us to have an authoritative way of interpreting the
Yeah.
scriptures, and God wants to provide clarity to us. There's a couple different ways that you could structure that, right? And you go through them in your paper. So you could have a singular authority where you have like one person at the head. You could have kind of a partner authority where you have maybe two equal authorities that are giving you these things. Or you could have a group authority where you have like a bunch of people who maybe democratically give you the authoritative interpretation. You land on the singular. Why?
Yeah, so the reason I land on the singular is from sort of a process of elimination. So I don't really give a positive argument as such for singular, but it's more saying the other two are not very good. So we're sort of left with this one. And so just starting with, let's say, the partner authority. The problem that we have with partner authorities, specifically where they are equal in authority, is just the problem or the possibility of stalemate. Because if you just do have people who have equal authority and they're not equally minded in that they agree about the same thing all the time, then if one person decides that this is, let's say we're going with the actual context of our discussion, let's say one person decides that the interpretation of God's revelation is this, and the other person decides that the interpretation of God's revelation is the opposite. What do we do? Because if they are so certain, for example, that this is actually their position of the matter, then how do we decide about which one is actually the correct one? And again, if if the whole point of God providing the authoritative mechanism is for accessibility, is for clarity, then why would He allow there to be a mechanism that could easily fall into stalemate about these important matters? And it could happen a lot of the time where they're just digging their heels in and saying, this is the correct way we interpret God's revelation. The other person says, no, it's this way. And then there is no way to sort of break the tie because they're equally authoritative. And so you just have that problem there, that you have the problem of stalemate. So I say, given that there is a stalemate problem, we just have to say that this can't be an effective way of the authoritative mechanism playing out. And then with the group authority, what we have here, and it is better in that, let's say the group authority is oddly numbered, so they don't have, even numbers that they have a stalemate again. The problem that you have is that it just seems to be the case that the only way you can make sense of how they can make a decision about the matter is by consensus. That they will come to a place of just saying this must be the correct position of the matter. And consensus can be good a lot of the time. And we use this as well, let's say in our judicial system with juries and stuff like that, they come to sort of a universal consensus about something. It can happen. But the problem that you have is with consensus, it just doesn't always indicate truth. Because you can reach consensus about things over many different matters that are not even truth indicating. So just think, for example, I'll give you an analogy with a jury. Um, think about, not to get controversial, but something like an O.J. Simpson case or something like that, where you just have a very, very persuasive lawyer who's just very good at what they do. That person can persuade the jury to come to a consensus that the person is guilty, even or innocent, even though in the truth of the matter they're not. And even though the evidence might be indicating one way, again, because of non-truth indicating things such as the persuasiveness of the lawyer and the way that they're able to dramatize the situation, you can get to a place where truth isn't actually grasped at with consensus. Now, obviously, with issues of theological matters, it won't be the same as a judicial thing. But again, it might not be because of actually what is the truth of the matter that they make a consensual decision on. And so what I sort of showed in or just highlighted was some philosophers who have argued that consensus just is not a truth indicating ground. And so it's not something that we would say is the best option when we're trying to actually get to the truth of the matter. So given that we have this problem of actually having truth indication with consensus, it seems like the group model wouldn't be the correct one that we would say God will want to use, because it just, if He leaves them with the freedom of their will and they come to consensus of things, again, it just might not be. And if someone is just thinking in their mind about church history, think about how many councils there were just during, let's say, the fourth century. So you had Nicaea in 325. And then a year later or months later, you had opposite councils that were saying actually no, Arius was correct, and Nicaea was wrong. And so if you see from 325 to 381, when you had the Council of Constantinople, how many councils there were, and they were consensus on things which we would say were not true. And so again, it just seems like consensus doesn't actually indicate truth. So given that we have these two options not being the best options, and this is not to say, by the way, that they don't have use. It's just saying if God is omnipotent in that he can generate any type of authority, and he's omniscient and he knows what the best authority is, why would he go with ones which are not as good? And so the idea here is with a singular authority, you're not going to have the problem of stalemate, because that single authority, again, he or she or whoever is going to make the decision and it's going to be final. And then he wouldn't have to also make decisions based on consensus, because it's just him who makes the final decision. Something to qualify though, this doesn't mean that that person isn't going to be informed by groups or informed by other things. So if we're thinking again in church history, let's say you have the papacy and you have councils. This doesn't mean the Pope is just going to go around like a wizard saying boom, 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 and everything is as I say it. It could be that actually it's informed based upon what a decision of a group is, but then the ultimate decision, if this is actually correct, would be then made by a singular authority.